Good afternoon. I'd like to call the May installment of the University Impact District Review Board to order. Our next business meeting on an as-needed basis will occur Thursday, June 12th, 2025 at 12 p.m. It'll be located at this building, third floor, room 205. The next hearing will occur on Thursday, June 26, 2025 at 4 p.m. in this chamber. I'd like to swear in the staff. Raise your right hand, state your name. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Nolan Harshaw, and yes.
Thank you. Would you like to call roll, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Fleming? Ms. Gunselman?
Yes.
Ms. Parker? Mr. Reeves? Mr. Sublette?
Yes.
Mr. Zemansky?
Yes.
And Mr. Madden?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is to review the minutes from last month. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any corrections? I actually have corrections. So I'll go ahead and state the corrections. It's a comment, so I'll just review it. For COA 2500184, comments just updated. The building is located on an important corner and is a gateway to the University District. The building affects the site condition and should be sympathetic to the neighborhoods to the north and to the east. Would like to see more undulation in the elevations to break down the facade. Would like to see the retail space on High Street to engage with the community. If the CVS entry moves to the corner, it would be a better solution for the site condition. Was not a fan of the window signage blocking view of the interior. In response to the concern that the site condition would not allow doors on the corner, offered that there is a solution to recess the entry instead of having the entry on the building line, which would allow for less congestion on the corner. Encourage applicant to take another look at the architecture as the design is currently built to the limits of the site and therefore out of place for the site. Both the building lines and architecture aesthetic needs to fit in better with the area and site context. That's the only revisions I have. Anybody else have any revisions? Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve with adjustments.
Motion to approve with the adjustment.
Second.
Thank you.
Can you call roll?
Will do. Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Ms. Gunselman?
Yes.
Mr. Sublette?
Yes.
Mr. Zemansky?
Yes.
And Mr. Madden?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here to speak this evening?
No public forum.
Okay, we can move ahead then to our first application. Application number COA 2500288. You may come to the table. Staff, can you present the staff report and meeting materials on the agenda item, please?
Thank you. I don't think my mic is working, so I'm going to try to speak up as best as I can.
Thank you.
The address is 41 East 9th Avenue. Graphics and signage. The proposed work description. The applicant is requesting review and action on a new signage package for the High Line on 9th. The proposal includes the following two signs. An 83 square foot awning mounted, internally illuminated aluminum channel letter sign, as well as a 15 square foot internally illuminated aluminum projecting sign. Submission includes site plan, renderings, and signage specification. The application was reviewed at the April 2025 UIDRB hearing. At that time, the board stated there was too much signage overall and specifically commented that the projecting sign was out of place at the top of the building and that the illuminated wall sign was unnecessary. Since that review, the applicant has made the following changes. They've removed the illuminated wall sign. They've lowered the height of the projecting sign, and they've added the name of the building to the canopy sign. University District Plan recommends projecting and wall signs that are logical and complementary component of the overall design of a storefront. The plan states that internal illumination may be appropriate. University District Plan also includes recommendations for sign size and placement, but states that larger signs on larger buildings may be appropriate. The proposal is generally consistent with these guidelines, and as such, staff recommends approval of this application without conditions.
Thank you. Board, do you have any questions for staff? Okay. Those who are speaking, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
I do. I do. You can state your name and anything to present the case.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Green, and this is one of the 3 State House applications that we talked about last time, and here we are again. These have been, all 3 have been substantially modified from the first time you've seen them, and so let's talk about State House on 9th. This has been, the signage at this entrance has been reduced. There was an illuminated wall sign, cabinet style wall sign at this entrance also, that's been removed. The awning sign seemed to be something the board appreciated more than, the awning sign was more appreciated than the wall sign. So we stuck with that and just added the location information for this building, which is Highline on 9th. On the awning sign, and then we reduced the projecting sign from a roof line location to between the 2nd and 3rd windows. So hopefully we heard what you said, and this is something that is acceptable to.
Thank you. Let's start discussion.
I appreciate that you've reduced the number of signs. I think that's great. Lowering the blade sign is great. Moving it between the windows or attempting to center it between those windows. Respecting the architecture seems like a good idea. I think that getting rid of the wall sign is also a good move. Doesn't interfere with that light that's currently there, so I don't have an objection with this application.
I agree. I think it's really a significant improvement.
I was trying to look and see what some of the adjacent buildings had. The canopy sounds good. I don't have a problem with that. I don't frankly see the point of the blade sign. So I think I guess where I'm at, canopy signs, I'm good on the canopy sign, but I question the need for the blade sign.
Well, the blade sign is, the client believes the blade sign is important because it exhibits the logo for this group of buildings, which is an S and an H with a red color. That is the purpose. It kind of gives cohesive feel to all these 3 buildings, and that is the purpose of the blade sign.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I question. I mean, typically a blade sign in urban areas meant to sort of provide a marker for pedestrians. They're looking for a restaurant, for example, right? Like, so, where's the McDonald's? So I see the blade sign down the street. The blade sign is generic. It's the same blade sign across the property. So the only point of it seems to be branding the properties, which to me seems unnecessary. I think the canopy sign is good. It locates the building, State House. It's got branding right there. The State House is the owner and the company, and then Highline on 9th is the particular project. So I guess I just find the blade sign superfluous, unnecessary.
There are similar blade signs in the area. I'm thinking of the Target that's down the street, where there are several of those small little Target
Yeah, and I
bullseyes.
think, I guess that's my point, like, it makes sense, you know, the Target, the Waffle House or whatever, like, you're looking for a specific location for a specific thing.
Understand, but this is, again, something that they're looking to have a common logo for all their, locations, and that really is the.
I get that
the
that's
sign.
their goal, I guess I just.
I
not
understand.
Personally convinced, but I'm
Okay,
one of 5 people, so, you know, as long as you got a majority, you can kind of ignore what I have to say.
would never ignore what you had to say.
Hello, board. My name is Haley, and I'm hoping that I can kind of provide some reflection and some understanding on why we want that blaze sign. Just from being in the area, I actually, a little bit of background, I travel to Columbus on a 2-week basis, so I'm here quite often. I've almost had every season except for summer. With that being said, I've kind of experienced what it's like to have students here, what it's like when students aren't here, what High Street looks like, is it has a lot of walkability, or is there a lot of people walking? So with that, the reason why that we wanted to do that blade sign portraying off the building is so people who are walking on High Street are able to see that State House Highline on 9th is not too far away. It's just right back there. One of the main issues that we have with, you know, this building, it's a little bit tucked away, it's a little bit out behind, typically where students pass on a daily basis. So hoping that we have that blade sign, so let's say if they glance over and they're looking for State House Highline on 9th, they're able to say, oh, hey, it's over there, there's that leasing office, and now I know where to go.
I think Keone, you bring up a good point. I don't have a strong feeling, but I think what we're missing is, it's not the name of the place, it's the name of the company. And so like typically you have a blade sign to say this is Target, right? It's not the owner of Target, it's not, and so the State House, that same sign shows, so it's not really, if someone's looking for Highline on 9, that sign doesn't tell them that. And so I mean, I think it is a very good point. I don't know that it's enough that I'm so against it.
Mm.
I think it is a little confusing personally, but
So actually, the building is called State House Highline on 9th. Highline on 9th is the term that we use to shorten it because we have 5 buildings, all State House, each have their own individual name. The company that actually owns it, which would be L3 Campus, which is who I'm a representative of.
Yeah, but I mean, you're gonna come to us with 2 additional packages, they both have blade signs, and the blade signs in all 3 packages are identical. So again, just going back to the point, it's like, you know, it'd be one thing if the blade sign was State House Highlight on 9th, and for the next one, it was that building. So at least there was a logic where like the blade sign identifies a particular place. So, you know, again, you need 3 votes. I know where I'm at, but you just need 3.
I think it cuts both ways. Number one, the blade signs are characteristic to the area, but you don't necessarily want blade signs for every single business. So I think you're trying to find a distinction between which businesses should have blade signs. I think that kind of falls on its face though, because who has ever gone to a Target from walking around the neighborhood and said, oh, Target, there's a blade sign, I'll go in. They found it via the internet for sure. So I'm not sure that really holds up. On the other hand, we don't want every business coming to us for a blade sign. So I think the real danger of it is that we do get unnecessary blade sign applications, and we're gonna have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. Is this the place to draw the line in the sand?
Since it is just the initials, is it really giving essential information about locating those buildings?
But definitely the color and the logo locate this as
If you
as a
already
building.
know that.
If I already know that, well, the
No, if
purpose,
you already know that that is the logo for this, for the management company that owns the building, it doesn't really give much information about the building itself, and therefore becomes even a little more superfluous.
I understand that this is a logo that is essential to this space. As you can see, it's tucked behind, it's not right on High Street, it's on 9th and Pearl. So there is a little space between the regular bustle of traffic, pedestrian traffic. It needs a little more visibility for students to find it.
Is there an alternate location for this sign that would be more appropriate outside of the blade sign location?
This sign, as last time we were here, the sign was more along the roof line. And because there was a discussion about pedestrian traffic and how this district really lends itself to that. We did move it down to accommodate that more pedestrian feel, but still at a height that could be easily visible from High Street, where most of the student traffic is occurring.
I assume you've done some type of site analysis that the building up front is not blocking this with the direction of the road, like that this is actually being seen from High Street.
It is being seen from High Street. I mean, the building in front of it will block some of the view, of course, but there's still enough vision as you look down Ninth to see that. There it is, way down there. But it's just a little bit of red
That's,
with a logo that is essential for this particular user to locate their building.
I know this is then, and this is kind of to your question, like, if it is visible from High Street, like I can see the purpose of a blade sign from this, but then I start to question it on the one that you're gonna present. Third on there is the one in front of it. It's just a blade sign right in front of the leasing office that has that there.
Yeah, that might be the distinction.
And so that one doesn't serve the same purpose as what you're saying, is that, hey, this does direct down
Yeah.
to that. And I think you're gonna probably have one at Wellington or the old Wellington, and it's gonna be there. That's gonna direct you down 17. Like those start to say, okay, that's the purpose of a blade sign to stick
Yeah.
out. But is there a purpose for it on the other one? Maybe that's separate for that case, but
Yeah.
that's the.
Understood.
For me, I'm generally fine with it for this one, because I think it does somewhat solve that purpose of bringing it down.
I agree.
Any other discussion? Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
What do you think?
I'm asking for a second.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fleming,
No.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Samansky. Yes. Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
That brings us to application COA 2500-290. Staff, would you like to present the information on the application?
The applicant is requesting review and action on a new signage package for the varsity. Proposal includes the following 6 signs: a 51 square foot internally illuminated aluminum channel letter wall sign, a 64 square foot internally illuminated projecting sign, a 59 square foot internally illuminated channel letter wall sign, 6 square foot non-illuminated aluminum wall sign, 2 of those, and a 10 square foot internally illuminated aluminum projecting sign. The application was last reviewed at the April 2025 UIDRB meeting, at which time the board stated there was too much signage overall and did not fit into the architecture. They specifically commented the directional signage was unnecessary. Since that meeting, the applicant has made the following changes. They removed the 32 square foot internally illuminated wall sign from the north elevation. They've removed the directional leasing office sign and added a new 32 square foot internally illuminated channel letter wall sign above the entrance on the north elevation. University District Plan recommends projecting on wall signs and states that internal illumination may be appropriate. The proposal is consistent with these guidelines. However, the University District Plan also includes recommendations for sign size and placement, but states that larger signs on larger buildings may be appropriate. Finally, the plan states that signage should be logically located and not dominate the facade. The proposal is somewhat consistent with these guidelines. As such, staff recommends the application be conditionally approved, with the condition being that the logo wall sign be removed and that the tower State House sign be mounted to border joints only.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does the board have any questions for staff? Okay, applicants, if you'd like to state your name and again, your information on the case.
Great. My name is Rebecca Green, and we have representatives here from State House, the owner, and Sun Company. This is the flagship for the State House student housing buildings, the varsity. Its location is prominent, and this is where they are trying to make their mimic this area. This particular, in this particular instance, we're proposing 2 wall signs on the north elevation. One is the illuminated wall sign, channel letters with the word varsity. You can see it there. Those are those signs there. Along with, I apologize, I'm having a little organizational issue. Yeah, along with the blade sign, which is the a projecting sign there indicating that this is the entrance to their leasing office.
Is that supposed to say 6.0 instead of 4.0?
6.0 instead of 4.0.
Because it says there's 2 of these wall
I
signs.
think there is I think that there is a problem with the 4. I don't think that is the right designation. 4 is the blade sign that says leasing office.
But are you also requiring new wall signs? It says there's 2 of the 6.0s on the,
So the 2 signs on the north side are the words State House and Varsity, which is which the varsity alone is they consider number 7. And then the sign number, I believe sign number 1 is the illuminated State House sign. But again, under Columbus's rules, that would be 1 total sign.
I think that whole, I'm just looking at page, the second page, your submittal.
And it says 4 and 7.
Well, it says the number 1 is the State House on the front. And it says the projecting sign is 2.1. The leasing office sign is 4.0, and there's 1 of those. But then it says there's 2 of the 6.0s. And then that 7.0 is the full sign that's a building.
Right.
So
I think it's, my understanding, it's just these illuminated channel letters with the varsity logo. That is going to be on the north side along with this leasing projecting sign. The 6.0 is just an aluminum, non-illuminated panel. It's like a little plaque. And it would be located on the south side of the south elevation.
it says 2.
Right, I think maybe there's an error in the quantity.
I believe in the initial scope that we had 2 of the 6.0 signs, 1 on the south side building and 1 on the north side building, but that was removed. It was to originally cover the plaque that says 11, I think.
My understanding is they're going to be removing this 11 plaque
Yeah.
that you see on that elevation. That's the south, that's the
Mhm.
south elevation that you're looking at there, and that's where that plaque would go.
It's the Wellington wall sign stay.
No, I'm sure the Wellington wall sign will not be staying. So this is the south elevation here with just the non-illuminated plaque. The north elevation has the words State House Varsity with the blade sign that says leasing with their logo. Those are those 2 elevations. And then the west side will have this projecting sign, which we have lowered from being at the roof line location to a location between the 2nd and 3rd window. It will also include this awning sign, which is over their office space. Over It's kind of hiding behind that green tree on the left, on the right. And then, of course, we will have the State House at the top, which is more up along the roof line. And again, individual channel letters centered between the first and fourth window there at the top. Again, this is considered the flagship building for this particular owner, and they are wanting to label this building as State House.
What's the city graphics code say? How many signs, size of signs?
City code, I don't know if I have that in front of me. I'm not 100% sure.
My understanding is the code would allow for a number of different kinds of wall signs based on the silhouette of the area.
Probably not this many and not this size, because you wouldn't be in front of us. If you were implying compliance with the code, staff would be able to staff approve it. You're here because you're asking for more than the code allows. And I guess I'm just curious, as a basement, what the code allows.
The only variance, it's not a variance, the only additional approval that I am anticipating for this particular frontage is, I do believe we will need a graphics plan for the word State House at the top. That will be the additional approval that we would be required. Because there are a number of multiple tenants along the bottom, so we have that. If you're looking for the code section, I believe it's 3377.25B. And then the corresponding in 3375.12 something. I'm not sure I can come up with a subsection. So I do anticipate if we do get the State House at the top, that we will have an additional step before we go to BCS for permitting. I do not believe we need a variance for area, wall sign area.
Well, I guess, yeah, let me be clear about it. I don't need variance. I mean, if you're in compliance with the city of Columbus graphics code for this district, then you don't have to come in front of the board. The staff can staff approve the signs. So the reason you're in front of us is either the quantity or the size of the signs exceeds what the city code allows. And I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the city code allows as a baseline, so I can better understand the differential between what the code allows and what you're asking for. I mean,
This, again, my understanding, there's not a limitation on the number of wall signs, except in this instance, because that one section where we have, which I cited, the 25, I can pull that for you if you'd like. And I believe we're good with areas.
well, you're not, because if you were, you would staff approve, you wouldn't be in front of us.
I think my understanding, well, again, I can't speak for staff and I won't.
It's not necessarily true, even though because we're in the university district. Just because, even though it doesn't have a variance, it would still be seen.
Well, no, so the sort of the way the board worked about a year or so ago, and this is true of all the city boards, they streamlined the process. So we used to see all the signs, every single sign in the district. And then they sort of moved to streamline the process where if the signs met the graphics code, staff would staff approve it. So the only signs we saw were the signs that exceeded the allowable limits for the.
On the staff report, so this is for the walls, the State House varsity wall sign is not oversized for the facade, although font exceeds plan recommendation. So that's what I think you're getting at. And then it says location of logo wall sign is inconsistent with plan recommendations, consider removal or replacement. So that's what he's getting at, is that there's multiple items that if those weren't there, if those weren't the staff comments, Nolan wouldn't have brought it in front of us because they're
Right.
inconsistent with plan recommendations. And so like the next one is for Size and location of the SH State House projecting signs are inconsistent. Font exceeds recommended size. Size of leasing office projected sign is inconsistent. Logo exceeds recommended size. Contents is duplicate of proposed wall signs. So there are a lot of items that are inconsistent with the plan.
Right.
And I do understand that. But this particular building it's much larger than what we normally see it's not at the Target, it's not CVS, it's not Chick-fil-A. This is a building that is large, it's multiple entrances and multiple users. So it is different, and I know that like the font size does exceed what is recommended by the guidelines. I know that there are other things that exceed what we normally see in that are under your guidelines. But in this instance, what we're looking for is a sign plan that is effective for a building of this size and this many users. And it's not unheard of in this district to have channel letter wall signs at the roof line.
Yeah, I don't contest that. I mean, Lumen down the street on 15th and High is a big sign. I think I would say the issue is more the quantity of signs and the content of the sign. So Lumen is the property, and the sign identifies the particular property. You know, I live there. I tell my friends, oh, go to Lumen, and they know where to go. You know, State House is the owner, not the property. So I mean, from my perspective, the sign that makes the most sense is State House Varsity, because if I live here, I'm presumably going to tell my friends, go to State House Varsity, and they're going to know that's different from State House Highline on 9. But I guess I question the sheer quantity of signs and the fact that the majority of signs don't identify uniquely the building, but rather identify the owner of the building. So the State House on High Street, the blade sign at the corner of High and whatever the cross street is, and the logo sign on the south are all signs that don't have anything specifically to do with the building. I mean, I think based on the kind of logic that's been discussed, I can buy 2, maybe 3 signs, the State House Varsity at the entrance to the north, in keeping with the example of Lumen, maybe a revised sign on High Street that specifically identifies the building, and a blade sign that identifies the leasing office, if one wants to make an argument that the blade sign tells you where to go, particularly if you're on Cross Street. But that, for me, that, you know, I don't understand the logo sign on the south. And I don't understand the point of the big blade sign at the corner.
I'd like to refine that point a little bit. It's the number of signs, but it's also the number of signs per square foot. You did say this is a larger building, and therefore it requires this number of signs, but they're all located on that northwest corner, more or less. It seems a little efficient. I agree with Keone that maybe a reduction of the signs in that area, or maybe more of a focus on one of them or 2 of them. So maybe you don't need the 2 State House, meaning State House letter signs, State House Varsity, and the vertical blade sign, maybe pick one of those.
I do want to reiterate, though I understand your guys' observations and feedback, that State House is not the ownership entity. That is the buildings. Those are the name of the buildings. The ownership entity is L3 Campus. State House is the name of the collective 5 properties. So each of the name is technically State House. So the State House Varsity would be what makes this very specific, but they all technically are under the umbrella of State House in our State House
But you're
buildings.
still talking about signs whose function is branding rather than location.
Yes.
Locating the building.
Correct.
And frankly, I don't think in terms of quantity of signs that branding carries the same priority that that signs that locate the building do.
Mhm.
I'll read what Daniel and Keone said. I think the State House Varsity is appropriate. The leasing blade sign is appropriate. I think either the projecting blade or the State House at top, both of those are both just saying State House. They're not directional. both branding. I understand the concept of a big building. One of those makes sense. My personal opinion is the lettering rather than the blade sign makes more sense. And then the just State House at this south entrance, I think is, not appropriate at all, because it's not even giving you, you don't even know what State House you're at. You're only just saying, and that's a resident entrance. It's not directing anyone outside that's living there. And so I generally think 3 signs is probably what's appropriate for this building, is my opinion.
The purpose of this south entrance sign is for residents and to cover up an existing Wellington sign that is mounted there. So we're hoping to cover that up so residents are able to identify the property as State House, not necessarily Wellington anymore. Though I do understand your observation.
And I think there could be some, I'd be in favor of some sign there that's whether it's an address or it's State House Varsity smaller, a
Yeah,
big
sure.
HS that says nothing is not what's appropriate.
So when you're talking about the letters at the top, are you comfortable with having that just with State House at the top of the building along the roof line? Facing High Street?
Yeah, I think, I mean, my personal, one branding like that, I'm fine with. I don't, it can't be a blade and that, both of those for just branding.
So there's a preference perhaps to the sign at the top or the projecting sign on the corner?
I second Ryan's thoughts about the sign at the top is preferable to the blade sign.
Understood. And then on the north entrance, those 2 signs, the leasing sign and the State House Varsity would be sufficient, would be adequate?
I mean, I don't think you need the blade sign, and I don't think it needs to be internally illuminated. I don't know why that just couldn't be a wall sign, similar to the one on the south that said leasing office.
Like the plaque.
Yeah. Because the State House varsity here is externally lit.
But this is the leasing office entrance. So it is somewhat distinguishable as opposed to just the resident entrance that we see on the south.
Yeah, that is the goal of this sign right here, just to distinguish where the leasing office is. Because there's so many storefronts, we're just hoping that we can draw some attention to where our storefront is technically.
I mean, you know, aren't selling hamburgers, like, it's a different kind of business, like someone looking to see an apartment sign a lease is not, you know, going down the street looking for a illuminated blade sign to figure out what they want to go.
Yeah, I do understand that, but we are dealing with students, and as most of you guys know, students don't necessarily know exactly where to go. Me being a student not
I mean,
long ago.
somebody teaches students, they all have this.
Yes.
They know where.
Yeah, and I do see your argument. You know, as someone that actually conducts leasing and conducts people to our office, you'd be surprised how complicated it is to find our office. So that is the goal of that building, just to draw some attention and just bring it in from the foot traffic that's on High Street.
Obviously, it does not, this particular entrance is on the north side and not on High Street proper. So it is helpful for students to see it as they're going down High Street.
Is there a blade sign for the retail that's further east?
So
The- can't remember.
down 17. Be 17. It's the Huntington colors on their,
At least for me, I still am okay with the blade sign. I think I prefer the Daniel's comment of it not being illuminated, because it's not really, you're not open at night.
Yeah.
It's not there. I think a non-illuminated blade sign would be better.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
But I do get the argument of directing people there and see the purpose of the blade sign.
Yeah.
And there's one there for the hunt right there, so
Um,
it's a small one, but that's.
Can we suggest moving to?
Satisfied. One idea would maybe to move the larger projecting sign to the southwest corner, so we don't have so much signage bunched up on the northwest corner. Not, yeah, on the west, yes. Thank you.
I go back to there, I'd say there's one in my, for my,
Yeah.
there's one branding sign.
I think that's plenty.
Okay. We wanted to try to come back. How would you proceed?
We would like to proceed with having approval today. So hopefully, is the only thing that's standing in it.
It looks to me like, well, there are a number of revisions that are being discussed.
Okay.
Is it okay if I summarize and you can tell me if I'm wrong? Or do you want to try to come back with a revised drawing?
I think let's just come back to the revised drawings. I think our main goal, as a client is just to have the State House on the top sign. If we're debating between, the State House on the very top or the blade sign, we would rather move forward with the State House on the top.
Okay, so are we going to projecting sign?
Yeah.
All right, so if it's okay, good night, we'll try to, can I try to summarize what I've heard? So just the State House at the top, on the west side. The north side, it's okay to have the awning sign as shown here with a non-illuminated projecting leasing sign. Is that correct? And then on the south side, can we still have a plaque? I know there was some discussion whether we need it, but it is the resident entrance and we are trying to mark it and cover up existing holes.
I'm okay with, like, the HS is not. It's just brand, if it was.
It said
It
varsity.
said varsity and an address or whatever, that there has to be more information than just a random HS.
To that point, though, this isn't this sign is reflecting just simply for residents. So this isn't for people who are, walking.
And they don't need a sign at all, just residents coming in there.
Where the goal is to cover up an existing sign that says Wellington, that's engraved into the building.
Remove the sign.
It's engraved into the building, from my understanding.
Address,
But we agree to-
Address sign.
address sign,
What number?
So revise it to be an address sign? Is that what we're saying?
Or varsity, yes.
I mean,
Or saying
it's just-
varsity.
It's a plaque that has holes in it, so you could fill those holes.
Gotcha. So can revise it either to be an address or to say varsity. And those are the signs that would be, I'm sorry. Are those, and so those are the signs that would be appropriate, you believe?
Yes.
Great. Do we need to come back? Staff,
Yeah.
for approval one more time, or is this something that can be administratively?
We can additional improvement hands down based on.
Understood.
That's definitely an option to either approve it as suggested or to continue or to approve with conditions that staff are able to approve.
I suppose you could. I'm looking at the existing sign, which is just a wall mounted sign, which actually works the way it should. It says the Wellington residential entrance, leasing office on 17th Avenue. I mean, if you want to give them additional approval, the awning sign on the north is fine, the blade sign on the north is fine, just non-illuminated. The State House sign, top of the building, to the west is fine.
Don't you make the motion?
Yeah, please make a
And then-
motion, Stoney. Got it.
Because I'm the least sympathetic one here. Okay, I move to approve the submission with the following conditions. The State House varsity sign on the north is approved as is. The blade sign indicating the leasing office is approved with the stipulation that it is non-illuminated. State House sign at the top of the building, the top of the west elevation is approved. The blade sign at the northwest corner is deleted. A sign can be provided subject to staff approval at the south entrance It should indicate something other than the logo, building name or address or residential entrance.
Thank you.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Clement,
Yes.
Ms. Gunzelman,
Yes.
Mr. Sabla,
Yes.
Mr. Zamansky,
Yes.
Mr. Mallon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
We've got one more.
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
To our next and last application that's been continued, COA 2500291. Staff, could you provide the information, please?
The applicant is requesting review and action on new signage package for the varsity. The proposal includes the following 4 signs. 37 square foot internally illuminated channel letter wall sign, 15 square foot internally illuminated luminous projecting sign, a 51 square foot awning mounted internally illuminated channel letter sign, and a 10 square foot internally illuminated aluminum projecting sign. This proposal was last reviewed at the April 2025 UIPRP meeting. At that meeting, the board commented there was too much signage overall, specifically stating that the 2 State House signs are on the west elevation were redundant and that the directional signs were unnecessary. Since that time, the applicant has made the following changes. Removed the directional leasing office wall sign, relocated the upper State House wall sign from the west elevation to the north above the doors, relocated the projecting sign from the west elevation to the north elevation near the doors, and removed unspecified interior illumination from highline portion of the canopy sign. The University District Plans recommends projecting and wall signs that are a logical complementary component of the overall design of a storefront. The plan states that internal illumination may be appropriate, and the proposal is consistent with these guidelines. However, the University District Plan also includes recommendations for sign size and placement. It states that larger signs on larger buildings may be appropriate. As such, staff recommends conditional approval of the application, with the condition being the wall sign be mounted through mortar joints only, rather than the face of the masonry.
Thank you. Does the board have any additional questions for staff? Applicants, you may continue with the presentation.
I'm Rebecca Green. Again, I'm here with State House today, and there have been, once again, we tried to hear that there were too many signs, and we did remove quite a few signs on this building. And so we are now proposing the following. On the north elevation, there would be a projecting sign and between the first and second floors, and a internally illuminated channel letters also between the first and second floors.
And what do those signs indicate other than the ownership of the building?
These signs indicate the ownership of the building.
That's not a,
State House.
that's not an entrance or anything.
I don't believe it is.
What locations?
Right here. Tell me. Like an entrance.
No, that is the side of the building.
This is just providing building identification for the north facade of this building. Also, on the High Street side, there is 2 signs proposed. One is State House Highline. This would be on a awning. And then a projecting sign also indicating that this is the leasing office. This sign we moved from a lower location to a little higher, so we had the 10-foot clearance that is often, that is recommended by your guidelines.
Here's my take. I'm going to be consistent with kind of the opinion I expressed in the previous project, but also what got approved on the previous one. State House Highline on the west, right? Fine. Leasing office sign, fine, non-illuminated. North signs serve no purpose. Don't need to be there.
Sign, we revised substantially this one by removing, I believe, several larger signs. Again, our goal here is to provide identification of this particular building and to all the students and the folks that are traveling along 9th Avenue. Oh, no. Yeah. 9th Avenue.
I agree wholeheartedly with the only The one on 9 is in a sign band at the location of the bar at the corner. It is totally, it's not serving the city. If it was at the top, like, and so last month when we came, we had the sign at the leasing office that was on the overhang, and then you had another one on top who said that
Correct.
was overkill. This building may not deserve in the sense of those two, because the leasing office on the other one is on a side street. That State House is at the retail location. It's not, it's in that sign band, totally misplaced in my opinion. I agree with Keone. And I agree with the other two on the overhang and the leasing side are, the leasing projecting are fine. So,
Would we not be allowed to have any signage on the north side of the building?
Why do you need it?
To provide for reflection on that, or insight, I believe that sign was once higher and then we were asked to have it lowered, so then we lowered it. So the goal for that sign was to be on a higher, so you would be able to see it as you're driving down the street, or if you're walking down the street, you would see that instead of looking straight up or to the side, that would be the building. So that was the goal of that sign, but it was asked to be lowered.
I believe it was above the leasing canopy before it got on this side. I mean, that is very, very confusing to have it in a sign band for a retail that's not to the State House. I mean, that's not appropriate in any way, in my opinion, there. I'm not opposed to some signage on the north. I agree with Keone that it's it has to serve a purpose. There is a residential entrance on that side. If there was something at there, maybe, but, that's,
Well, as we recall, we did have another one of those very large State House wall signs facing High Street on this one as well, on this building initially as well. And the goal here was to still have that identifier, but moving it to the other side of the building. So we had an identifier for State House that wasn't so close to the awning sign and somewhat maybe conflicting with that awning sign that was facing high. If we put, also we had a projecting sign on the northwest corner as well. Previously, would it be appropriate to put a sign, a State House sign on the north elevation along the roof line? Is that something that would be appropriate?
Like on the bump out
For
at the
me.
top.
Yeah, I mean, the big
Maybe
sign
I'm right.
makes sense on High Street. High Street's pretty heavily trafficked. Vehicles are going at decent speed. I mean, the sign where you have it makes sense because that's the entrance to the building. And that's where the previous highlighted 9 sign was. I don't see a good argument for a sign on 9. It doesn't do anything for you. Well, and also keep in mind, like the reason the board exists is we're trying to take into consideration the greater district and it's a balancing act between allowing every business and owner to identify their property and get business, but also not clutter the district with signs, So I'm not seeing a good argument. Like I said, I'm okay with the stuff on High Street, makes perfect sense. But I don't see any reason stuff on 9.
We don't disagree. I do understand the feedback on that. We're just hoping that we can use some sign to identify that that building is ours without it just being on the leasing, above the leasing area.
Previously, there was one of their logo signs above, on this northwest corner. Would that be something that the board would consider again? We removed it because we thought we did not care for it. That's why we moved it. Previously, there was the SH sign, projecting sign on that corner directed towards High Street between the second and third windows. We had previously recommended or asked for that. Would that be something that the board would consider?
I mean, you can ask what other people think. think I've stated my case. I'm good with the 2 High Street.
I think if you had to have something along nine that you're going by, I think it's strange that it's in the band, the retail signage area. Seems unfortunate.
What if they bumped a channel letter set to the bump out triangle at the corner to the top in white?
I think we should stay away from the corner, with illuminated anything. It's just pretty garish, but if you had to have something on Island Pond, Ninth, State House, and then Island, I think is what people would really want. I think what the board would want to see because it labels the building and not necessarily the branding. So it truly is wayfinding.
So you prefer the words highline? Maybe a
There's a
longer line?
there's a function there if you include highlight beyond just branding.
It's location finding or wayfinding.
What would be your suggestion on the building on Ninth or that sign? If you're looking at it,
The goal is just to identify that this building is ours. It is State House Highline.
So
So I mean, it may not be a blade sign, that's totally fine. We're just hoping that we can have something, a sign of some sort that identifies that this building is State House Highline.
I think, I mean, it's not our position as a board to sit here and negotiate where it is and you show where it's appropriate. Like the State House on when you did it at above the Chick-fil-A, that aligns with 17. There's people coming down 17. There's a purpose. There's a line of sight here on when you presented it on High Street. It was up at the top above another State House sign. We said that didn't make sense. Here, it doesn't make sense at the blade. If it makes logical sense, I think we're logical to it, but we're not in a position here to negotiate where it could go and what it could be. Present something for that makes sense, and I think we.
So if you want to. Okay. Do you want to try to get approval for what we got? And then we have. So at this point, we'd like to go ahead and drop the signage on the north and just see if we could get approval for the 2 signs on the High Street side, west elevation. And then on non-illuminated side.
Right. Yeah, I move to approve the application of the following conditions. The State House Highline sign on the west elevation above the entrance is approved. The leasing office blade sign is approved with the condition that it is non-illuminated. The 2 signs to the north are not approved as part of this approval.
And any signage that is going into masonry goes through the mortar joints, it's not the brickets.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Kunzelman,
Yes.
Mr. Sublette,
Yes.
Mr. Zemanski,
Yes.
and Mr. Finger.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for your time. I'd like to call application COA 2500426. You may come to the table. Staff, could you present the material to the board, please?
Yes, thank you. So it's 88 16th Avenue. The applicant is requesting review and action on the graphics package for the Blue 116 and associated variances. Internally illuminated projecting sign with the Blue logo, internally illuminated 19-foot parking wall sign, and a non-illuminated metal address numbers. The applicant is also proposing a new light fixture type on the front elevation, 2 of which would display a 10-inch by 3.5-inch logo. Proposal would require the following variances. Illuminated projecting sign, section 3376.02 requires illuminated signs to be located at a minimum of 50 feet from the building. The proposed sign will be placed approximately 6 to 8 feet from the building. Section 3376.04 limits the maximum graphic area of a sign to 64 square feet and the height to 12 feet. Proposed sign exceeds these limits. Parking garage entry sign, section 3377.14, which limits signage at the access point to a number of 6 square feet. The proposed sign lettering meets this requirement. The proposed backer totals 32.3 square feet. The University District Plan recommends pedestrian-oriented signage such as wall signs and projecting signs that are logical and complementary components of the overall design in terms of lighting, scale, color, style, and materials. Further, the plan states that buildings should not be dominated by graphics. Proposal is consistent with these recommendations. The plan also includes guidelines for signage size and placement. Proposal is generally inconsistent with these recommendations. While the proposed projecting and wall sign are larger than recommended, staff is supportive of the requested variances due to the size of the building. Regarding the placement of the projecting sign, staff recommends the relocation of the sign as far forward on the 10-foot brick section of the building as possible to avoid directly blocking any windows. The new light fixtures, for the new light fixtures, plan recommends the use of lighting that complements and enhances the architectural features and minimizes uplighting and light spillage. Proposed fixtures are consistent with these guidelines. And I just have a quick update. We did receive additional materials. I'm not sure if this is the exact one, but they did follow the staff's recommendation of pushing that sign as far as they could along that brick section. In addition to making sure that it is within the mortar joints and not drilled directly into the brick as well. So those two are updates, and staff is revising their recommendation, no longer a conditional approval, but just a straight approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions for staff? Applicants, I need to swear you in. Raise your right hand. State, do you swear to or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can state your name and continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alicia Orlando, representing the graphics here in the package.
I'm Oliver Holtzberry. I'm with Dave Sign Company.
So first, the illuminated blade sign. The page right before this will determine if it's the most up to date. We have since updated the package to show that this blade sign is pushed as far forward as possible. The distance between the back of the sign and the facade of the building is now 10 feet 7 inches. So we're bringing that forward as far as possible. Otherwise, I don't recall any other updates since we heard from the staff on making some of those edits.
Do you have any additional presentation material that demonstrates that you don't have that available, do you? Is that the revised packet?
It is.
Do you mind if we take a look at that?
Sure.
Hey, let's. What's in the?
That's what we have.
What is the reasoning for the blade sign being so large?
So we were considering a ground monument sign, but there is lack of area for that. And so we're pushing it up onto the building and elongating it to mimic the building structure on the side, and also putting it right in that nook while still being on the face. And so making it as large as possible will help the visibility as you turn from High Street going down. Also with the existing landscaping and trees, we're concerned with where those might hit. And so planning for the most visibility as possible.
I mean, I'm sympathetic to a large sign that identifies the building. I appreciate that. This is actually the name of the building, not the name of the company. I think my issue with the blade sign is, among other things, you got a couple residents 10 foot back behind the sign that are gonna have a shit view because they're gonna look at the back of the sign. So I think, I don't know what the answer is. I'm trying to remember what the entirety of the building looks like. I just wonder if there's not a better solution. Yeah, you see those two windows that have a great view of the rear of the sign.
Is the lettering facing the windows?
No.
No,
They'll
but
see the back of the sign.
painted aluminum backer.
I'm assuming they see the unit, they at least.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, you know, caveat emptor, but I mean, still, right, like I think I would be more sympathetic to some other sign that gave you identification and branding without reducing the quality of a couple of the units that you go top of the building, integrated into the guardrail, the terrace over the door. Not sure what the solution is.
One of the reasons we chose the blade sign is for the pedestrian traffic. And with it being 4 stories up at that level in which you just described, we're concerned with it being lost when you're right up against the building because the sidewalk is really close.
I mean, the site is pretty open, like if you're approaching it from this direction, and this is clearly the orientation the sign's meant to address, the site opens up, because you go east on High Street, and basically you kind of hit this triangle, and the building is sort of opposite, a pretty open area, because the street sort of next branches off to the north and the east. I mean, like I said, I don't have a problem with the size of the sign. In some ways, it kind of makes sense because you're going to see it from a distance, and it identifies a property that's a little bit out of the core of the high street area. But I think I'd like to see something that didn't intentionally make a couple of the units much worse.
Or you could shrink the size.
Or individual letters without a backer, maybe.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like an appendage because you didn't have spot to put the sign on the building, so you just pack something on to the side. I mean, a projecting sign usually is because you're at a corner and you're trying to look at it from one way. This is just like, we ran out of bricks, so we'll just patch the sign on the side. And I get with the arch and, there's not a traditional sign band, there's not, I get that. But I agree with the only comments, the location just isn't right.
Even like the signage on the lights is so fine. It's really nice. And the parking sign is within scale of the opening for the garage below. And the lettering isn't too big, pretty nice. And then this thing is huge. It just doesn't, it seems out of place in and amongst the signage package itself, let alone the building. So I don't know, it's hard for me to believe that you need a 20-foot high sign that says blue.
And it's projecting 6'6".
It's just big. It doesn't make, to me, it just does not make any visual sense. I think maybe graphically or branding wise, it makes all the sense in the world, but I think that's not what we're evaluating here.
I think another reason for the blade sign is too that city 15-foot setback requirement. So then rather than trying to do like a monument sign here, but I think that's another reason for the blade sign, but.
I'm not opposed to the blade sign, it's just the scale.
Mm.
I would prefer this than a monument sign, just because I think rebranding a monument sign is going to pose or present problems in the future, and I think that you could more easily replace a blade sign, especially if it were of appropriate scale.
Without looking at it, I personally think a monument sign is more appropriate for that location. And, if you're coming for variances here anyway, I mean, so a variance on the 15-foot setback of a monument sign, this already has a significant kind of setback from the right of way with the sidewalk and all of that. I mean, that 15 foot is for various reasons based on how the building's positioned in the site. So I think looking at a monument sign, in my opinion, could be.
That would address Keona's concern about blocking windows.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I do know that our client would like to keep it up off of the ground if possible, knowing how close the sidewalk is to that lawn area. Just from a vandalism perspective, if we can avoid that at any cost. I do think if the blade sign were a smaller scale of it is appropriate, we can look at that along with the individual letters to see what might work well with that space.
Sure.
Understanding that as is, it's too large.
So we have enough information. Would you like to continue the application? That's might be the most appropriate to next month.
Sure.
Yeah, that's, would you mind if we discuss the other two signs here tonight, though? To see if there's any changes we need there? I think, were those on the? Yeah,
Sort of park.
Parking in the entry signage. Yeah.
The lights,
So like,
the address, apartments, those three.
Yes.
yeah,
Is there public parking for the project? Or is this purely for residents?
Residents and their visitors.
Is there visitor parking?
I believe they will be parking in the same garage. And right next to it on the left side there is trash. So the two garage doors are right next to each other. So we're trying to identify that this is the parking entrance. So it makes it easy for folks to know which door to go into.
Okay, and according to staff, this one was the only thing on this that's outside the graphics code was the size of the backer, but the backer makes sense relative to the garage entrance. I mean, makes sense. I'm good with it. Initially, I didn't care for it, but as you said, the visitor parking and to identify that this is the garage entrance as opposed to the trash next door. I mean, the logo signs I think are pretty, the low globes are nice. The previous applicant could alert something from y'all. And the address signs, nice.
thank you. Make a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue the application.
Second,
Mr. Fleming,
Yes.
Ms. Dunzelman,
yes.
Mr. Sidlett,
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski.
Yes.
And Mr. Melick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is COA 2500468. Conceptual application. You may come to the table. Staff, would you like to present the project?
Yes, thank you. This is a conceptual review for 2160 North High Street. The applicant is requesting a conceptual review on a proposed new mixed-use student housing building. This project includes demolition of the existing CVS building on site, a new 378,000 square foot, 16-story building, with approximately 10,000 square feet of commercial space fronting North High Street.
Right. So,
Yeah.
there, yeah, so that's an extra 16.
72 vehicular parking spaces split between the ground floor and one level of underground parking. Bicycle parking provided per code. The applicant is working with permitted zoning services to identify any variances that will be needed. The submission includes inspirational images, site context information, floor plans, elevation, and renderings. This proposal was last heard at the April 2025 UIDRB hearing. At that time, the board was generally supportive of the density and height at this location, but stated that work needed to be done on the massing to better respond to the surrounding neighborhood. The board also made suggestions regarding the ground floor that included relocating the retail entrance to additional landscaping, public art, and reworking the residential on the northern portion of the High Street elevation. Lastly, the board recommends the use of high-quality materials. Since that review, the applicant has made the following changes. They relocated and recessed the main retail entry to the corner of Lane and High to provide additional public space at that corner that will be activated with planters and other site elements. Planters and additional bicycle parking have been added to along High Street. They've removed residential units from the ground floor and High Street frontage and replaced with retail space. They've added a two-story amenity space on the second floor above the retail entry at Lane and High to further activate the corner. Floors 5 through 16 now extend beyond the right-of-way line at the corner. They've added two-story brick elements at the ground floor that respond to the adjacent site scale and materiality along more slender elements at all four corners. They've changed the material finish at the windows to create groupings, tie vertical groupings of windows together. As a reminder, this property was rezoned as part of the Zone In Phase 1 and is now subject to requirements of the Urban Core District, which includes a height limit of 12 stories or up to 16 stories with an affordability bonus. The district includes adjacency requirements for stepping the building back on the east side due to abutting a residential or apartment district with a 35-foot height limit. Staff notes a certificate of appropriateness is required, meaning the proposal should also be consistent with the University District Plan guidelines in the context of the broader policy vision established by City Council with Zone In. The University District Plan recommends that mixed uses on this site and the new buildings address the corner, including a high level of transparency on the first floor, street trees, and public art. The plan also calls for a building's height and mass to be mitigated through the use of setbacks, building articulation, and quality architecture and materials. Proposal is generally consistent with these recommendations. However, the applicant is encouraged to explore a more dynamic massing of the north and east elevations to increase compatibility with the surrounding area. Additionally, incorporation of public art on the East Lane Avenue frontage and enhanced landscaping to offset the lack of publicly accessible open space in the site area are recommended. Staff notes that minimal information regarding lighting, landscaping, and materiality, and any rooftop uses or amenities have been provided at this time to evaluate for consistency with plan recommendations. The applicant should review the University District Plan guidelines and further developing these aspects of the design. No recommendation, because it's exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board, do you have any additional questions for staff? If you guys could raise your right hands. Please, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may continue the presentation.
Well, thank you all for having us back from last time. We really appreciated your feedback. I think we can all deeply appreciate that you represent your communities and you care about your community. So we really appreciated the sort of clear feedback you guys gave us last time. We were able to take that feedback and take action on it through a lot of different design elements that Zach's going to touch on. But I just wanted to touch on a few of the things that we heard from you all that we've moved to address. You asked us to integrate the building more into the housing surrounding it, the Alhambra building especially, to the north side of it. So we've taken different steps to do that. We've also adjusted the positioning of the retail, which is something that we discussed in the last hearing. You also mentioned enhancing the materiality, which is something that we took different actions on that Zach will get into. And then staff previously had recommended including some public art in that. It's not shown in the renderings, but it's something we'll commit to and would love your feedback on in terms of what direction might be a good way to go on that. So Zach's going to walk you through some of this feedback. But again, we really appreciated what you guys were able to do last time and sort of giving us consensus-driven feedback and clear actionable direction. So we're looking for the same thing again, and I'll have Zach walk you through what we did. So.
And thank you to the board for the opportunity to present again. If you don't mind going to maybe the last rendering, yeah, thank you very much. So as Jim kind of mentioned, we went back and listened to a lot of your feedback and tried to incorporate as much of that into the new design as we could. I think one of the main elements that came out of that was a desire to relocate the retail entry to the corner. And I think Ms. Gunzelman's suggestion of, recessing that entry back on that corner is what really made the difference. We took that suggestion, recessed that main retail entry on that corner, and that provides a natural kind of overhang at that space while also opening up that corner a little bit more, makes it more open, more pedestrian friendly, pulls it off of the immediate corner in that space, which now allows us to provide some additional benching and planters and kind of landscaping elements within that area, which I think is a really a good benefit. We're also providing additional planters and bike parking kind of along High Street just north of that area as well. It also provided the opportunity to introduce this two-story amenity space just above that entryway. Kind of see this as kind of a glass box in that area that further activates this corner. And it's an extension of the amenity courtyard within the footprint of the building. We heard your comments on some of the materiality and look to simplify that. So the main materials are a red brick, a black brick, and then a silver metallic finish with some accents of darker metals and some wood look tones. And the materials that are going to be in the kind of 30 to 35 foot range from grade are going to be, a cavity veneer brick, metal panel, and then storefront within that kind of lower banding area. And then we also looked at that residential that we had kind of on the north side on High Street and removed that and replaced it with retail frontage. On the corner, maybe if you kind of go 2 slides back. So then we kind of started looking at the kind of the overall massing of the building. And what we are proposing is to extend the building from the 5th floor and above slightly beyond the right of way to kind of complete that corner there. And this allowed us to eliminate that chamfer that was previously within the project. We understand that this is going to require a right-of-way encroachment approval, which we will need to get approved after we have approval from this board. We've maintained the kind of glass and transparency on this corner as well as the corner to the north as well. And then the other corners, we've kind of articulated this with more slender vertical silver metallic elements at each one of these corners to kind of help break up that overall massing. And kind of in response to some of the comments we received on kind of the punched openings, we've looked at grouping some of the openings in kind of vertical bands by changing the materiality of that, again, to kind of reduce that kind of visual of the overall punched opening within the space. So the project is committed to providing public art. As Jim mentioned, we don't have it on here right now, but we'd be very interested in hearing feedback from the board about where we feel that's most appropriate. We're thinking likely kind of on the east side of the Lane Avenue facade and potentially kind of wrapping to the Pearl Alley facade as well. We're maintaining the setback to the residential on the east side once we get above that 35-foot height limit. And then the project is committing to meeting the National Green Building Standards bronze certification. So I think a lot of the changes that we made, in direct response to the feedback that we heard really improved the overall design, by creating more dynamic massing and increasing the compatibility with the surrounding areas, while also animating the ground floor, activating the corner at Lane and High, and creating variation within the fenestration system. So welcome your feedback and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the public forum to speak on this application? Thank you. We can begin our discussion.
You mentioned the primary materials are red and black brick, but the elevations still show canalized systems. Could you elaborate on where is the cavity wall brick and where's the canalized system?
Yeah, so we would look at mostly within those first 2 stories is where we would have that. So one thing I hadn't really mentioned was we introduced kind of a 2-story red brick element that wraps from the north side of High Street, kind of around Pearl Alley, and then to the east side of East Lane. So those red brick elements would be cavity brick up to that height. And then as we kind of move within the black brick portions, within those kind of the 2 stories, there tends to be a horizontal banding, like a signage band of like a metal element that would kind of create that separation between that. And then directly on the corner, we would take that up the 3 stories to the underside of the red brick volume.
So everything above 2 stories on the west and the south and above 3 stories at the corner is still the panelized ethos system.
Correct, yeah, some type of panelized system.
Excuse me,
So yeah, some type of panelized system.
some type of panelized system. What do you have in mind?
I mean, likely ethos, but we're open to still kind of exploring that.
You mentioned about sort of taking another look at the north facade and addressing how it addresses the north residential community. Can you explain how you've done that or demonstrate that in one of your images?
Viewing. Well, I think, one of the elements that we try to do is take a look at the height of those structures and then elevate the materials like on the cavity brick up another floor so that from the pedestrianscape as you're walking, you're seeing a higher quality material that blends in with the community to the north. I know previously when this project enveloped the whole block, it was sort of an element of preserving those. So now we've sort of stepped this back all the way to just this single parcel, and then we tried to elevate the amount of height we've done on that higher grade material so that we kind of blend in on pedestrian level is one idea. Another thing was you had mentioned there are some residential units within the structure on the north side, and like Zach mentioned, we've wrapped the retail up higher so that as you walk past there, those residential units aren't facing the street anymore.
And those kind of the red brick elements that we introduced there, those, are matching in a similar height of the buildings directly to the north, as well as the buildings to the east, kind of in that 30 to 35 foot height range. So creating that and then allowing the materials that go above there, especially on those corners, to be kind of the lighter silver metallic finish that makes it feel a little bit lighter as it kind of goes up above.
As we move forward in these conceptual reviews, it'd be interesting to see what that alley or walkway looks like.
Yeah.
To me, it's just showing a brick facade. We're not looking at any undulation on that facade. We're addressing it in a residential way. It's just really a canyon wall. So I think the board would be very interested in seeing something that's sympathetic to those structures to the north.
Yeah, and we do have the residential on the north side of that off of High Street still remain. So absolutely something we'll kind of develop, but we would have kind of that more residential feel at those levels as well, because we have the units in that space.
I think it's an important area that we're interested in.
Absolutely.
I do thank you very much for taking another look at the corner, addressing that in the way you did. I like this much better than what was presented last month. I can see that being really activated now as a corner. I like the idea of having some type of an amenity space on the second level that's double height. Again, kind of creating energy and activation on the corner. It's a really positive image from that vantage point. So thank you very much for really taking a look at that.
I think going forward beyond the conceptual applications, I think seeing detail all the way around the building is going to be very helpful. A detailed site plan would be really good, obviously, but then detail on the elevation itself in the cavity brick is going to be really nice and really help to start to define the building, make it feel more pedestrian friendly, more neighborhood friendly. As Lori was getting at, the north side probably needs a little bit more articulation to make it feel like the neighborhood that surrounds. And then obviously identifying specific areas where you think public art can go. I think wrapping the corner on the east side, south to east side is maybe a good idea. That's maybe organically where you might find public art. So that seems like a good idea. So yeah, I look forward to seeing more development on the first 2 floors. And then also on the upper floors, you're showing a lot of curtain wall going up. I think there's some mullions and some spandrel that are going to come into play here. So it would be good to see that articulation. That might help you define some of the materials and the panelized systems as well, picking up on those horizontal lines. I have a question. So this is a conceptual review. What do you need from us to move into a actual review space?
Probably go ahead on this direction so that we can then start to develop those details that you want to see, start to develop the site plan, flush it out, start meeting with, traffic and parking and get their input and kind of really making this real. But we need some consensus from the board to say that this is, I know you don't give conceptual approvals, but a conceptual go ahead is what we would need. And ideally, if we get that today, we can start moving forward.
You have, has the city weighed in about the affordability?
We have been trying to address that, and we have not had availability with them to meet, but they know that we're seeking their input. And we are looking to meet with them definitely this month. Some folks are.
Whether or not you get 4 bonus floors is still a question to be answered.
We are,
That's not exact, I wouldn't phrase it exactly that way. I would say that we're simply figuring out how we implement renting this to students. So in this plan, we're including the 20% affordable units.
You are, but it hasn't been completely resolved. You're assuming you can resolve it, and the city will agree to whatever your proposal is, but basically the 16-story height is based on the 4 additional bonus floors for the affordable units. And that still remains a question that is not completely resolved, correct?
I think how I'd answer that is I'd say that we're working through the details of renting those to students with the city, but we are designing the building to include the 20% of the units being affordable. So in the sense that we are designing this building and this massing to include affordable units, that's definitely what we're doing. And we're looking forward to working with the city on attempting to be able to lease those units to students as well. But really, ultimately, we are designing the building to include 20% of units being affordable. If that makes sense. I know we're kind of circling a little bit here, but
A little bit, yes.
But either way, we are designing it with 20% of units being affordable ultimately at the end of the day.
I mean, I guess I would like some certitude that it is, you're complying with the city's requirements in order to get the 20% bonus.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't see any way we couldn't comply with the city to be able to get the affordable bonus. I mean, ultimately, if we do work with the city to try to, establish a guideline to rent those units to students, that's what we're looking to do with the city. I mean, we're being totally transparent in that. But, ultimately, we're going to be designing the building with 20% of the units to be affordable. That's how we could be able to achieve the 16-story bonus. I mean, that's our only understanding of what the rules are. So,
speaking of the city, I mean, I know when we last looked at this, there was no determination of what variances would be needed under zone N. Can you be a little more specific about that now?
Yeah, I think from a similar standpoint, our understanding is that there are no variances that would be required.
except for the right of way, which
I'm sorry. Speak up.
We would have
the
the
right
right
of
of
way.
way,
Yes.
which is not a,
Right.
That's
not
not a
technically a variance.
It's not a variance, it's
So
an
the-
application process.
That's what the cantilever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how do you feel? Have you had discussions with the city on that?
We've started those discussions, to figure out what that process is. However, we cannot officially finalize all of that until we have approval from this board, that they will not vote on that until it's been approved through this board.
I mean, I think that's the chicken or the egg, right? Because that element at the corner is a big part of this line. And so
We've
if you're
seen
taking,
that.
I mean, it's not a risk, I think, to us. I mean, because we're approving this, it's a risk to you guys of.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just interested.
I mean, I would say I still have some concerns with, look, I think you listened to us from the last meeting. You tried to do a lot to address things. You moved the entrance to the CVS corner. You cleaned up the massing, you got rid of the chamfer. I think you're still talking about 2 stories of real cavity brick and 14 stories of ethos, drive it or something similar. I'm not sure I personally feel that that's in compliance with the the district's desire for high quality materials. I did go take a look at paving after the last meeting. I think paving works because the building on the corner is real masonry, and the ephes is in the block in the back that is off the street, screened by the houses. No offense, the ephes is not great. And, you know, you can see the fake brick because you can get up to it and you can see panel lines. And so I question whether or not 14 stories of ephes on a prominent corner in the downtown district meets the stated desires of the university district plan of building high quality materials. I think the grouping of the windows with an opaque panel is a nice sleight of hand, but you still have pretty small windows on the south, the east, and the north. The north elevation in particular is kind of rough. If you want to go to the northern elevation.
While they do that, I completely agree with what Keone was saying. I wouldn't want to push it in this review, maybe in the actual reviews, but changing where the ephes is, lumping it toward the lesser zinc facades, bringing higher quality materials to the south on that showpiece on the southwestern corner. That's where you should use good materials. People are going to see it. The sunlight's going to hit it. There's going to be no lying on that piece.
So that's east. They're not labeled correctly. That's
Yeah.
so.
No, that's east. That's the east elevation.
Oh, sorry. East. I mean east.
I guess.
Yeah, my bad. Other element, please. No. Keep going. There you go. Zoom in a little bit. I mean, that's a lot of windows, mostly the same size. It's a lot of surface area. If you compare it to some of the precedent images you provided, the 7-story block at the base of Seattle had a better window to wall ratio, as did the building in Austin. You know, I would think you could improve upon this. I get it. Solid walls more economical than windows, but it's a big building on a prominent corner. It needs to, you know, do something more. And I think Dan's right about you're going to make a point out of the corner element. It should be of better materials. You know, there's also a bit of a range between ephes and, you know, laid cavity brick, and you can see it in the merchant building where it's thin brick and precast concrete panels. But I don't know, you are going to have to, from my perspective, I think you got to do a little better. I think Dan gave you a potential pathway, prioritize the better materials on public street and then step it back a little on the streets that are not as prominent. I will say I'd have to think through how this fits our purview, but I have a little bit of a concern with just the basic donut RT. I mean, the building's essentially a donut that goes from the 2nd story to the 12th story. That is a pretty mean light well. You got 10 stories of residential units that are never even going to see daylight at certain times of the year. You know, typically, I think the donut's been fine because it's been on smaller buildings, like the Wellington is 6 stories. Or oftentimes the buildings have an open side, so the courtyard faces clear sky. But I don't know, I mean, 12 to 14 stories of that is going to be rough.
What is the size of that courtyard?
Yeah. It's actually a pretty good size.
Yeah, because I think it's little over 60,
Yeah,
it's like 60, 70 feet long.
50 something in the vertical and at least 60 or 70.
It's pretty sizable because of the sort of block. It looks smaller, but it's actually pretty sizable.
It's a good size.
I think percent that, I mean, I've built a lot of these in a 4 and 5 story, and a lot, or you can get away on 4 and 5 stories at, 45, 50 by 50. I think you only mentioned point, you're doubling, more than doubling that height up there. I think if you go to the Rambler on Lane, I think their courtyard, I think it would be a study to kind of maybe look at that, because I think there are 8 stories in a donut shape on their courtyards. And I've been in there, you know, I don't think they feel great, but I don't think they feel terrible, but I think providing a little bit more information on that would be helpful. But I generally am reiterating comments. I think there's still some work to do on material and all that, but the moves on the ground floor, moving the residential, I still have concerns over the parking, but it's not gonna hold me up. I think that's it does affect the neighborhood. I don't deny that, but I also think it'd be harder to lease, and it's really on a developer, but I think it looked like 64 residential and then some commercial. I think that's really tight on parking.
How come no balconies inside? I can see not having exteriorized balconies 16 stories up. No inside though.
Not currently.
Would you consider it? Might help break down the repetitiveness of the facade.
We can take a look at it. We found in some municipalities, given the nature of the housing, that it's likely to be marketed to students. That some municipalities don't like having the balconies, just security type of thing. So oftentimes, you know, we'll take a look at it, though ultimately, and see if there's an opportunity for it.
Get you the,
Do you feel you have enough information from the board to move on to the next step?
Yeah, I guess just to clarify, do we have consensus on generally moving forward with this direction with all of the comments that we continue to work on? Because we'd really like to kind of get into, you know, site compliance and like all of the other things, but we can't really get into a lot of those things unless we have some semblance of this is fine to move forward, keep going, other. So I just want to get a general consensus.
What do you
from the
mean
board.
by keep going?
Keep developing this, you know, we need to keep moving the project forward, and we just want to make sure that this is the direction that we can keep going forward with while developing all of the things that you have pointed out as we go forward.
I think as long as the comments that were made or today are still taken into consideration, for example, the avoiding the monotony of the windows.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not categorically opposed to the project. I mean, I think the bulk and the height is fine. I think you need to resolve that you really can get the 16 stories of building, but I think for a building on a prominent building, it's not simply a matter of, the shapes and the rendering, but like really paying attention to the size of windows, the scale of it in the city, and the character of the material that's going to contribute to the urban environment. And I get that you're trying to make the project pencil out, but that's not our purview. It's got to be a building that, you know, fits within the neighborhood and contributes to it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you very much. Application COA 2500434. You may come to the table. Staff, would you like to present the material?
Yes. This is a conceptual application for 2195 North High Street. The applicant is requesting conceptual review on a proposed new mixed-use building that is part of a larger redevelopment project in both 50 West Lane Avenue and 2195 North High Street. The overall project includes demolishing the existing and providing a new home for the University Baptist Church, 837 beds of student-oriented housing between two buildings, ground floor retail along Lane Avenue, indoor and outdoor amenity space in the Lane Avenue building, vehicular and bicycle parking at the Lane Avenue building. Portion of the project under the jurisdiction of UIDRB includes demolition of the existing building on the Little Bar site, a new nine-story mixed-use building, University Baptist Church anchoring the first floor, 48 units on floors 2 through 9, and a third floor connector at 50 West Lane Avenue, at the 50 West Lane Avenue building. The application was last heard by the UIDRB at the February 2023 hearing. At that time, the proposal was for a 5-story mixed-use building on the High Street portion of the project. During that review, the board recommended a more energetic and articulated facade as well as additional green space. Since the last review, the property was rezoned as part of Zone N Phase 1 and is now subject to the requirements of the Urban Core District, which includes a height limit of 12 stories or up to 16 stories with the affordability bonus. Staff notes a certificate of appropriateness is required, meaning the proposal should be consistent with the University District Plan design guidelines in the context of the broader policy vision established by City Council with Zone N. University District Plan recommends a mix of uses on this site, and the new buildings address the corner include a high level of transparency on the first floor and public art. The plan also calls for the building's height and mass to be mitigated through the use of setbacks and building articulation, quality architecture, and materials. The proposal is generally consistent with these recommendations. Additionally, the plan recommends the incorporation of landscaping, including street trees, and the creation of enjoyable public spaces. The current proposal does not include these elements. Staff recommends the applicant include enhanced landscaping if publicly accessible open space cannot be accommodated on the site. The plan also recommends enhancing pedestrian orientation by reducing reliance on automobiles. Therefore, the applicant is encouraged to provide additional bicycle parking beyond the code minimum. Lastly, the University District Plan recommends preservation and rehabilitation of existing buildings that contribute to the district's diverse character. The existing building on site is potentially contributing, and it looks like it was built in 1966. As such, staff requests the applicant complete a half-life report in coordination with the planning division prior to demolition of the building. Lastly, staff notes the information on lighting and signage is not provided at this time to evaluate for consistency with the plan recommendations. The applicant should review University District Plan guidelines and further developing these aspects of the design. This is a consent order.
Thank you. Does the board have any additional questions for staff?
I do. There seems to be two sites here. We're reviewing the buildings, one of the sites.
Yes.
The other site, I see plans for it. What is the status of that project? Is it a separate project?
I believe it is a separate project.
That's fine. It's the building you recommend that you have site report on for, is it Little Bar?
Yes.
Okay, so we can effectively just scrub the other site in our mind, other than the connection to proposed buildings.
Yes. Okay. I think it's just there for context.
Little Bar is contributing.
Yes.
Just technically, yes.
I need to swear you in, so if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may present.
So real quick, I was going to have Adam Gentner from ACC for some slides. I think maybe put at the end. Yeah.
Since it's been 2 years, I was going to tell you the who and the why, and Mitch and Mary and Andrew will go through the what on where we're at. Just to remind you, I'm with American Campus Communities, national developer, long-term owner and manager of property. We currently manage about 130,000 beds across the country. Again, just strong, stable, well-versed in student housing. Why? You know, the Ohio State's a market we've always wanted to be in. We've made some attempts, haven't been successful. Luckily, we came to terms with the UBC and the Little Bar and it worked diligently for a very long time now, with lots of patience from all sides, working through the process to try to get a deal done. Ohio State, big, strong, stable university, flagship universities that we like to be at. Obviously, lots of growth, 1,000 new freshmen last year, one of the largest freshman classes they've had. They continue to have a dearth of housing and continue to have to put pressure in the off-campus market to go master lease additional beds in order to meet their freshman sophomore requirement they have. So like the demand here and love the location. Y Lane and High Avenue, there you go. Love the location. Pedestrian, it basically is an extension of the North Residential District. It's, the Rambler that's delivering this year. Our project, landmark site, you just saw, all great located student purpose-built properties. So excited about the property.
And then, yeah, we were showing a couple of integration sites.
Oh, I do want to talk about the art. We were going to talk about this at the end. Public art, I love when Mitch brought it up, and I love that that's an initiative by you. American Campus, complete accident, came into the High RU Foundation, which is in Austin. By accident meaning we bought the site where the original mural by Daniel Johnson was done. Started to learn more about what it was and saving it and what we were going to do, and then fell in love with the whole mission. And kind of work with the synergies of their group. May is Mental Health Month that we're in right now. We've expanded their programming into our residential programming through all 130,000 of our residents now. We've brought in our competitors with us, Landmarks. There's 24 student housing developers now that implement this mental health wellness programming into their residential programming across all of that. So super excited about that. Part of that is we recreate the Jeremiah the Frog, if you'll flip to the next one, through all of our properties across the country. So would love to put a piece of this as a public art. We have probably a couple spots on the High Street building that you're going to review, as well as a couple on the Lane Avenue that you're not viewing for potential outdoor public art. So maybe we do this plus a couple other, we're still debating on what we put in there. But excited about the public art, and this could fit better from our perspective.
It's a good transition. So sorry to go maybe to the overall site planning and because it's they're connected as part of it all, but also that the larger building that is going to be on Lane Avenue, it has 347 cars, and that will then end the bicycle spaces per code for the High Street building. Big idea, the Little Bar is not a big site, and so we kind of maximize that to get the right of way, engage the street. But what we're trying to do in the overall site on the west side of the Lane Avenue site, there just really isn't a great place for kids to move north-south. It's either through a neighborhood lawn or this alley. So the big idea here is to create a pedestrian way in conjunction with the Newman Center to move that north-south pedestrian alleyway. And then along that, we're putting street lights. Part of the garage that's going to be 4 stories high. We're putting art panels for public art panels and white. Same thing with the alley. The good thing about that crossover across the alley is it forces us to bring a lot of stuff into the infrastructure off the poles and into the ground, spending a significant amount of money. And so our hope is that that alley will get cleaned up a bit. And maybe be just a safer route. Overall, I think we said we had 839 beds, 246 units. The parking, 4-story parking garage. It's not quite 0.375 of the old university design guidelines, but it's really close. 300 spaces will be dedicated to those 837 beds, so it's about 0.36. On the first floor, the University Baptist Church will have 5 staff spaces, and then there'll be 40 spaces for public use. During the church, when they're going into their where the congregations are heavy and they're going in there, it'll be reserved for them. So I've got some control issues we have to figure out, but where they're not being used by the church, they'll be public. On the elevations, again, I'm gonna let Andrew and Mary talk about the first floor, so I think that's the most important and how we develop the corner. But what we're looking for is the Columbus context, address the street, use quality materials and the like. So I'll let Andrew and Mary talk about the first floor and it's what the big idea.
Well, I'll just say, so the church is about 20 years newer than the university itself. So about 1890 is the roots of University Baptist Church, originally at Highland and 10th. And so the symbiotic relationship of their organization and then the greater campus community, is over 100 years old. And it would have been easy, I think, and rational by certain metrics when this opportunity presented itself for them to say, this is great, enjoy your property, and to pack up and move to some other easier location. But because I think of that DNA of the relationship to the university and the interest in the campus community and being a part of it, they, agreed to slog through this process with all of us and keep their footprint there. And so, and they had a choice in that process about whether they'd be on the Lane Avenue piece or the High Street piece. And they felt strongly about being, as a congregation, about being, on High Street and really actually upping their presence in a lot of respects. And so, there's sort of two parts of their mission. There's the church proper, and then there's the sort of day-to-day sort of ministry and functioning of the church. And so in terms of zoning it, the sanctuary is accessed from the north side there, you can see, and that's sort of a more formal entry. And then the corner is the entry into their day-to-day sort of operations. And that was interesting. The comment about, public space, I think the site doesn't allow for a lot of public space. And in the strict sense, it's not, but I think their aspiration is that it very much functions, the internal space really functions like a public space. Their hope is, and again, they've got, I think starting in 1900, they were doing dinners for new students, and they still do that. On campus, they had Sunday night fireside chats. That starts in the 20s or something. So there's like the idea that this is a space that students gather and congregate and enter is key to the whole design.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the hatched area as you transition from the exterior into the inside of this building. The big interior architecture concept is that it acts as a porch and that it will kind of feel like an outdoor space when you come in there. And, that will lead you to either the sanctuary, the fellowship hall, or some of the other office elements, conference rooms, meeting rooms. But that initial space as you come in, we're planning that it would be full of greenery, and the way that it would be furnished is very open and just allowing groups to gather, different size groups to gather through there, but that it would feel very active and act like a porch so that it's really engaged with the street. That's how we're approaching the interior of it. So hopefully that addresses some of the street tree components too, because there's not a ton of sidewalk room, as Andrew was mentioning, but the interior should feel like an outdoor space as you come into it. And hopefully that will be perceived through from the sidewalk as well.
And so the hatched area is the ground zone, the in zone, I forget what the term is in the news code, but that 12-foot depth area of transparency, and that they want to see activity and not storage shelves or something like that. So that's what we're trying to indicate there. And I think Mary and Andrew did a real nice job. Even at the sanctuary, they put curtain wall there. So even in that 12-foot zone, that's still transparency as you go into the sanctuary. So it's kind of a nice idea, and it still keeps active to the street. Street trees. So we've been, and I think I indicated on the application, with two preliminary site compliance plans. So it's only an 8-foot sidewalk on High Street and a 10-foot on Norwich. High Street also has a light that we want to keep, or that they've asked us to keep, and then they have the arch a little bit farther, to the south, which you want to keep. We're all about adding street trees, but it was very specific. They didn't want trees. So we would ask that, we can work with zoning, and whoever made that decision, glad to look at it again. But their what they call Door E work specifically did not have trees. So that's why we don't show them. I mean, we've shown, I think they're even shown on the plan, but I mean,
they're outside the property line anyway, aren't they, Mitch?
Yeah, they would always be in the right of way, right? Because we
Yeah, I
are,
mean, that's not your purview. I mean,
well, I think we might have to build them if they told us to, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine. I'm not sure of this, but it felt like they were asking not to do it because it's such a narrow walk. You would choke it down.
Right.
And this is just, seems to be too busy of a corner or a street, I guess, to choke down.
Y'all were before us before, obviously it was a shorter building, but it was a different zoning district. Where did we end up? I'm trying to remember.
So we weren't asking for certificate of appropriateness. We were asking for a variance to change the use and to park off site.
Right.
And it was just a variance, and we obviously hadn't developed the plans, and, you know, we hadn't, Adam hadn't gotten a program for the church and all that stuff, so we were just showing an overdeveloped Massey
Yeah, because I thought.
to ask for the variance. Yeah.
Something not, not as much articulation of the base, but it was a 5 or 6 story building, it was red brick and there's some gray. I mean, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just was gonna, again, it was just for that variance, so we were kind of just showing the massing. We hadn't developed the design far enough to start to think about articulating the corner and how the church was gonna use it. So, but I think, those were the kind of the big ideas. This is in a 12-story district, but, we're kind of in that transition zone because the next zone to the north, even though it's part of the in-zone commercial code, it's the next one down. And I don't have to memory what the 3-digit code is, but I think it's like a 6-story zone that it goes down. So
Yeah, you're at like the very northern edge of the urban core. It steps down.
Yes.
As you cross the street. I mean, you're in by rights, by height. And the building is, from my perspective, reasonable massing. Not really a peer review, just curious, what's the structural system?
it's metal studs over a
Like a-
concrete podium.
Before, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. And you're here for conceptual review?
Yes.
I mean, the brick is real brick, thank you. The metal's metal, it's a real material. I mean, the material palette's pretty good. I think the comment I have is, and Andrew, are you doing the base? Like, you're doing the church, right? If I remember this right.
Yeah.
So is that the inside or the outside too?
Definitely inside, and then we're sort of partnering with ACOC to sort out how the exterior works. And
I mean, to me, that's the sort of interesting part of the problem, because obviously the church wants a presence and, it's a ecclesiastical type form, and then it's got 6-8 stories of residential above, and how do you make the two meet? And how does the church as a podium sort of work with the stuff above? So, just by way of observation, the sort of mix between the two seems maybe a little not quite there. Like, you got a bottom half and you got a top half, and the two are a little separate. The bottom half, sort of clean, stripped down, not bad. And then so I raise that just more as a question. I think the one other question I have is the transition from High Street to the side street. I get the change in material because comparatively the brick's going to be expensive and the metal's cheaper. I'm not 100% sold on the top with the tripartite scheme and the metal corners. I don't know if that's the way to do it, or whether you have just a solid brick frontis piece and then you just transition to metal once you get past that. Again, just kind of raising this question.
I'll start where you left off. I think the metal panel, the dividing line between the brick and the gray, I get what's going on. I don't know why it's there. It's kind of sort of confusing to me where it transitions. I don't know why the black wouldn't start where the brick ends. So you just have a consistent gray stripe at the top. Take what you will from that. I think on the base, if I may refine it, what we were saying is that there's a relationship between the top and the base, but there's also a casualness that almost like the base doesn't care enough about the top, or the top doesn't care enough about the base, but they sort of know each other are there, so it's a little bit mixed. So there's this sticky up part of the brick facing High Street. I don't know why that's there and how that relates to what's going on with the base. So I think just either the top doesn't care about the base or they're more tightly related. About the cast stone stuff, it's very nice. Guess what's weird to me is I get the entrance to the congregation being on the north facade. That makes all the sense in the world, but then we have a corner entry that's really celebrated via that chamfered edge and the higher cast stone. That's really confusing. As a church member, I'd be pretty confused about that. But maybe you wouldn't be for the second time you went there, but the first time it would be confusing.
That's for the public, and that's for people that we want to get in and be active. You're a church member, you know you're going down to that, I don't know. So, because that's the sanctuary entrance.
Well, I think my confusion just says it needs to be a little bit clearer, maybe it doesn't.
Oh.
And then as far as the idea of being open and transparent, I think I see a lot of glass, but it doesn't feel very open to me. So maybe that's a strategy to help use the cast stone, maybe not such a heavy way, maybe it's more of a frame and that there's glass in between. So that there's better transparency into there, because I think that's the big idea. It's green, there's this greenhouse idea in the first floor. I think that's really going to help the presence on the street, help what the concerns are from the staff are. So I think you really do want to open it more, even though you already have a lot of glass there.
Got a lot of glass, yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, it becomes less significant. And I think, you know, the interest of the church, and I think that cornice piece was to be significant. Now we lighten the hell out of it. I'm not, you know, we put people in that thing. Those are big openings. I mean, those are 18-foot high openings. So yeah, you know, if it's all curtain wall, I think that it's going to, in my opinion, would increase what you know, you said the upper stories weren't talking the lower story, and then you start lightening that up, even visually, I think it might be disturbing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
The idea is I extemporaneously threw out new sign. They probably do. I would just consider making it a little bit lighter on the base, and you can have all the heaviness you want on top. But in that way, there's at least a difference between the two and not this casual relationship.
Not sure if I kind of like a heavy base.
Make it really heavy. And then the top really light. I don't know. That's my thing. It just seems like really confused to me.
To add on to what you're saying, I mean, if you look at this corner as perfect application is that corner entries for the, you know, goes up the height. I think you've got these punched openings on the side, which kind of makes me confused. I think that was part of it. So, you know, the side has a base with what appears to be a punch opening. It's just a larger piece of glass. And then next to it, you get more of the storefront idea that you would typically see on High Street or Lane Avenue. So I think that for me is, I mean, I agree. I think it's lovely, the cast stone, and I really enjoy the entry into the main church area. But this corner's just, it's confusing, and then I've got the brick in between.
So we
Feel like I need some consistency there.
So we did look at some of the side elevations, like eliminating some of the brick and making it more glassy. One of the things that the church was looking for was an ability to communicate with the community, and that's where the banners came in. So when we removed some of that brick and made those spaces feel, you know, going with the concept that we were trying to achieve, making it more open and glassy, we lost some of that ability to like hang those banners, and that was something that felt important to the church building committee. When we were talking about signage and the ability to say, like, we're trying to welcome people in, how do we communicate that? And banners was something that they came up with. And so, I mean, those, it could be mounted on something that's steel or thinner or something like that. So, but that was one of the.
Don't get me wrong, if this were not conceptual, I would vote for it. But you brought us so much detail, it's fantastic, I
It's
can't
great
help
to
but
have
talk about it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's anyway, Matt, just to get your thought, I mean, those are very large openings. So when you say the typical lane of it, I don't disagree from a plan aspect. But from a elevation, I mean, those are much bigger than most. And Mary's right, we opened up that, both the east and the north. Tectonically, it bothered me, right? We're gonna have these columns anyway. And so then when you start addressing the columns in this curtain wall, you kind of denuded the front elevation. Well, one, I think it looks ham-handed. And then two, tectonically, it's like this big opening shouldn't be holding up 8 stories of masonry,
Maybe that's God's intervention.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I love the idea of opening up everything up, having this greenery inside. I love
Yeah.
that idea. It's a beautiful idea. I'd say just fight for it a little bit more.
I mean, but yeah, okay. Those are some big columns too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that's,
it is expressive of the structural system behind it. The piers actually, even if the brick, when the brick goes away, as we studied it, what's behind the glass, 6, 8 inches is a significant concrete pier. So there's a, honesty about how it's getting articulated, but that doesn't make it, I understand the comment too, in terms of the investigation, so.
My memory is going back to the last time you've been here, but I think you've listened to a lot of what we said about the activity on High Street, creating specific entries and energizing the corner. I like the idea of the 2 entrances kind of being celebrated. I think that's good. I think there's probably a little work still on the residential above and just where the materials break, kind of what Daniel said. It being a non-architect, I'll just throw maybe that corner on the alley that brick might go up a little bit more than just that 2-story that ends there at the second level. But for me, and I don't know why the cast stone banners, I'm struggling with those and the connectivity. Like, to me, I'm almost like, let that be the brick, let that recess there, celebrate the 2 entrances. I kind of struggle with those banners, and that's my only kind of architectural comment on there. But otherwise, I do kind of like the base. I think it feels pretty good.
and just to go back, so what we were thinking is that element above the corner, that's above the corner, making that masonry and dyeing the masonry then into the inside corner, giving it both a panel, sorry, it'd be the one, yeah, right, that one. So it has that panel and that red as an element. And then we, as part of the evolution of everything, we step that back kind of in respect to the neighborhoods to the north. We give a little bit more relief back. And we felt like that was a nice place, to maybe terminate the masonry and then go with the metal again. Yeah, that's allowed, so, if everything was masonry, it'd be awesome, but I mean, it just, to get this kind of density done, so.
I don't have a problem with the metal. I'm more as kind of looking at that corner. Is that brick placed, is there a little bit more masonry there at that alley corner to kind of emphasize and just not totally kind of turn your back to what's at High Street? I don't think it has to go I don't think it has to go all the way up like it does.
Yeah.
But could that be a stronger corner there as well?
Yep.
As an idea.
Yeah, I think what everyone's saying is kind of at a design level. It's just how do you refine the aesthetic strategy of the 4 different materials, right? You've got face brick, you've got cast stone, you have the dark charcoal gray metal, and you have the light gray metal. And your intent is to kind of stitch them together, but also sort of keep them all separate. It seems like it just could be clarified maybe a little more, like you either stitch things together more, you separate them more, like, you know, it's like either, like the capstone is here, the capstone is here, that's important.
Yeah.
You know, so it kind of clarifies a little, or you stitch it a little more, and, you know, what Ryan was saying, the brick comes up and you know, and I don't know what the answer is, that's where you all figure out, but it seems like it could go more one way or the other, and it would just tighten up the approach. But I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I agree, Dan. I mean, these are relatively minor comments. I think you know, it's a pretty nice building and I kind of appreciate the choice of materials.
I know our purview is from the floor plan, but that, taking that light well and the greenery really, I think, adds to, from the previous floor plan, how the thrift would lay out. I think it's a huge improvement.
The same question I had across the street. Have you determined, under zoning, will there be additional variances?
We don't believe to be any variances. We're at, I think we're at 12, we're at 9 and they're at 12. We're, you know, well under the square footage, our FAR. I mean, they want everybody up on the street, which I think is a great idea. So, no, I don't see any variances. And you know, I think you made a good point about you don't want the parking, but you do want the parking, that kind of thing. And we are really close to the old university guidelines for this building be accommodated.
No, and I think, I mean, the 0.375, the other one was well below.
Right.
Even that. So I don't have parking issue here.
The only variance that I could see potentially being, and I don't know, would be potentially, are you going to find the parcels for the walkway to the other parcel, or how are you going to find it?
We are, they're separate buildings, separate parcels. They all have independent services and everything. And then code allows us to do that under chapter 31 or something like that.
You just have to get a right of way easement for
Yes.
the over.
And we've,
I think there was something, we talked about this.
Yes, and you
tying the parking together, that this can't go without the others.
right. And then we've already, I think it was the area commission, we had to get a recommendation and that was voted and record. And so we're just right now doing our structural engineering. We have to figure out how many more easements we might need for a footer, but other than that, we have the override easement already done. The one question I had about staff comments was the landscaping plan. I mean, we don't have any place to landscape.
Yeah, I think.
And I'm not control right away, so.
I think that's a kind of standard staff.
Okay.
Every project, but I think that probably has more to do with a typical project that has some landscaping. One thing, south elevation.
Oof, you picked that one, did you?
Well.
That's a wall for graffiti. We can install it if you want.
No, that is, I would suggest take the brick.
So we're really tight. We're at 5 feet. I don't know if I can even open up anymore on that.
Maybe open up.
He's fine, yeah, he's 5 foot.
5 foot from.
Percentage of openings.
Oh, no, I don't think you need all the bricks. I'm saying, see how the bricks stop?
Yeah, I got you. I understand.
Like, pull it over, so,
Yeah.
like, you know, it's sort of thin and it reads a little bit like wallpaper. Make it match the mass of the building more.
Okay.
You'll probably see that on the street.
You're gonna, for sure, yeah.
Until the next one gets put up against it. But you know, yeah, exactly. And then the other comment was on lighting plan. So I think the idea was, I mean, we showed some exterior lights on the Norwich and gave you the fixture, but I guess the other thought was that we've got soffits at the entries, and instead of strapping something onto the building and all that, you know, we would light those spaces. Do you want to see that lighting plan and want to know what light fixtures are, or we just, I'm not sure what we were asking for.
Yes, to both.
Oh, so you want to see
Yeah.
what the soffit is?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the board typically looks for down lighting. when it comes to wall lighting. So that would need to be.
These are the only two wall lights, so we're not doing any wall lighting, that's what I'm saying, it's in the ceiling soffit, it's gonna be a glorified recessed can,
I mean, that's fine too. I think that's
just to indicate that.
a standard comment, just to understand what.
I think it's typically showing just where they are.
Yeah.
It's recessed or similar, or like, it just shows that you plan to do that, the
Okay.
lighting in there.
Got you.
Box check.
Got it.
Since signage was a big topic tonight. The sayings across is kind of an important, message that the church wanted to express out. I'm hearing that's probably all right, as far as that goes, and then the banners along there as well. Those would be, speak for Adam and UBC, but, change with different seasons and messages on the banners, obviously, the built-in sayings. Kind of a big component of the overall, and that's how we kind of address that area for you next time.
We haven't solidified anything, but our first first suggestion was love is enough, and just kind of more encouraging sayings that represent the church, but also communicate to students and the neighborhood. Banners would be seasonal, rotated. I'm guessing Advent, different liturgical seasons that the church observes, and then maybe promotional materials as well. We do like a nuclear disarmament concert every year. And, so that's kind of a big deal that we, partner with neighborhood services, among others for that. So those would be just part of what we want to communicate.
I have no issue with any of that. I think Keone's comment about maybe not using the capstone as a backer to the quotes or the sayings might be a good idea. But as far as the lettering or the size of it or the banners, no issue. Then again, I am not overly familiar with the size requirements of the UIDRB.
I don't think the sayings are necessarily something, but I know there's some on the banners and how often you're changing of whether it becomes temporary signage, and there's rules on that. I would look to staff and some more research on the changing of. I don't have a problem with them being there in that concept, but there are some regulations.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I would default to the city. I think what I would say is a permanent engraving in a building that is part of the civic nature of the building is different from a for-profit
Commercial signage.
branding building.
I also like that it makes it feel more churchy. And I guess that's another comment. Let's amp up the church stuff first floors. I think that's the more it becomes like that and becomes the new steward for your congregation, but provides character to the neighborhood that otherwise would not be there.
Right.
Can I ask one quick question? I heard that the ribbon, the concrete ribbon or the capstone ribbon seems a little maybe clunky, may not be the right word, but maybe heavy. Is that right? For our purposes, we kind of thought that it read as we wanted it to read as a single unit passing from Norwich to High. And so we wanted that ribbon to kind of communicate continuity. But if it's, if it's kind of brick, we almost thought it lost.
Yeah, goes away.
It became kind of a student residence.
At least for me, it's the brick above it then. I mean, to me, it's almost like it was at the top and it interrupted and that brick below and there, it just,
this was
reads weird.
Well,
Separating brick and that thin band of brick above. If there was more brick above, you'd be like, okay, this might make more sense, but the proportions are off.
We located it high, we located it low, and then, I mean, we were trying to, I don't disagree, right? But, so long story short, we had to meet up with the garage across the street at a certain level, right? And that's why this podium's really high. And so but we also don't want to put, 20 feet of glass open into the thing, because then it would just, so we'll look at that for sure.
I mean, I
see what you're saying.
It's almost like if it just moved the top and let the capstone have that banding at top. And the brick just goes up a little bit, so there's more brick at the bottom and not.
Yep.
I don't know how that really looks, but that'd be one thing.
I think you're establishing a data line there, right? So
Right.
I would just follow.
It's a helpful comment. And it's one of those things where you're sitting during the presentation thinking,
We all.
yeah. So it's helpful commentary.
No, and it's not like we didn't struggle and had it 16 different places, so yeah, we're still doing it.
Great. Do you have enough for yourselves to continue?
I think so, and, we were just, what we wanted to take away is the height is all right. And it sounds like nobody's complaining about the height, okay.
See you back in June for a vote.
Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment on this? I think they all work for Mitch.
They're with us.
Travel.
Faded them out.
Just making sure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Anyone asked, we asked.
Appreciate it.
You have a remarkable memory. That is,
We didn't show the
that
brick,
years
but
ago.
we'll show it next week. And brick samples.
Okay, next on the agenda are staff department applications. And I request a motion to enter the staff approved applications into record. Is there anything that we should be concerned about? They were all graphics, yeah.
Second.
Thank you. Call roll.
Mr. Clement?
Yes.
Ms. Councilman?
Yes.
Mr. Select?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
And Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Thank you. Who was the second on that? Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Declare the meeting adjourned at 6:27.
Thank you so much.